It's been said that every quilt tells a story, and it's so true. But I also believe every quilter has a story to tell. I wanted to hear about the people behind these wonderful quilts and thought you'd enjoy hearing about their lives also. Welcome to A Quilter's Life. What do you do when the company you work for closes and your family needs help? Open a quilt business, of course. Ronni Chavez was able to make it all come together through a rough time in her life. Now Ronni is designing entertaining quilt patterns, offering tutorials, and has even written her first book, The Crazy Quilter. Ronni, I've been so looking forward to getting to chat with you. Welcome to A Quilter's Life.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I forget who you interviewed. I was getting their newsletter and they sent the link of the podcast, and I've been listening ever since.
Oh, great. It seems like you've been a long-time listener, and I think you're on my email list too.
Yes, I signed up for newsletter right away. Yeah. I live in the middle of nowhere, so newsletters are really exciting for me to keep in touch with the real world out there.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, since you're a person that gets my email list, I have a question. I am curious. I don't like to overload information. Is my email too light, or is it fine just the information I give?
Yeah, I would say it's just right. It's nice to hear about you, and I like your house pictures on Instagram.
Oh, thank you.
All the beautiful worlds you have. But yeah, you're also correctly focused on the interview too, with enough background to make you want to go over and click on that and listen to the whole thing. Some people, you get newsletters and they're going pages and pages of stuff that, like, what does this have to do? No, yours is perfectly balanced.
Thank you. I've been wondering what people think, but I haven't had a chance to ask someone, so thank you. Well, let's jump back to your background. Tell about where you were born and raised.
I've been raised in Arizona. Yeah. I got to travel some between high school and, after college, I traveled too. I was a librarian, and I had a super fun job in national parks. We'd travel to each park and we were indexing their scientific reports that their scientists had created in-house. And so I got to work in 5 states in 1 year, just in all the national park offices. It was super exciting. That not a typical kind of librarian job, but one of the fun things I got to do.
Oh, I could only imagine the wonderful information you got to see.
Yeah, it turns out they were giving research grants to things they'd already researched. And they're like, whoa, we got to stop and get a hold on this and find out, have we done this before? And so, so we had powers to go through everyone's desk and closet and just give us all your papers. Yeah, just to create an index of where do you go when you want to see that research. Some parks would have copies of what was published in other parks, and some things might be lost entirely, so just putting that all together for everyone.
Oh, so you got to see everybody's organizational skills.
Yeah, and the park people were so nice. They were always welcoming us behind the scenes to tours. I got to camp out on White Sands.
Really?
Yeah, that was a fun night.
I have been there.
Oh, did you see the IBOC?
I don't think so. We did the sledding.
Oh, fun. I think it was before it was a park. They imported some African big game. Somebody thought that would be fun to have an invasive species on the White Sands. No. So it's a real surprise when you see them with their big horns coming over the White Sands. They're still there.
Wow.
And of course, Grand Canyon, they've reintroduced buffalo. Buffalo used to come all the way to the middle of Arizona.
Huh.
Yeah, they were like across the whole continent. And so they're reintroducing those in historic places where they really belong. So that's neat.
That is cool.
So I know too much little things like that.
Isn't that part of being a librarian?
Yeah, that was the fun part. Yeah.
So how about a special childhood memory?
I remember I got some birthday money from my grandma, and there's nothing to do out here because it was 120 degrees there. But there was a yard sale in my neighborhood, and I bought a stitch dictionary and an upholstery sample book. And I spent the summer teaching myself every stitch, practicing on those sample fabrics and just going through the stitch dictionary, trying to learn how to stitch.
Self-education.
Yeah. We didn't have TV or anything, so it was a good way to stay busy. So, yeah, what a treasure. I still have that. It was the big Reader's Digest stitch book.
Reader's Digest put out some pretty good stuff, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, you're right.
Other than quilting, you mentioned that you've been a librarian. Did you continue with the librarian or did you move on to other jobs?
I switched to the newspaper. That was my last job. Not a great career move, I can imagine what happened to newspaper. That was a lot of fun because I just so love publishing. I love seeing the presses run and being part of that. I was the newspapers and education manager. So I did PBS style fundraising to make student tabloids that were sent to schools. And so that was a lot of fun, having my own tabloid printed, watching it printed. They had this crazy antiquated system for assigning the papers that would be sent to school. That was tricky to learn that. One morning I woke up and I realized I think we made a mistake in the draw. And so I drove into town, it's 30 miles, to check if the draw would come out right when the paper boys, they get the papers from the dock and they would take them to the school. And yeah, it was off by a couple hundred. So I had enough backlog printed that I could get those to the dock in time.
I'm only imagining how nervous you were on that drive to there. Is it there? Is it not? Is it there?
Yeah, because I was like, oh, if I'm wrong, then I should just stayed in bed, and this is a complete waste of time. But if I'm right, there'll be a bunch of schools calling, where's our papers? And you can't have a class, if you're planning to teach from the thing and it didn't show up, Fortunately, I won that one, But yeah, so then my dad had a stroke and the newspaper shut down. I'm laid off and my baby's in the 3rd grade. And I was like, what are we going to do? So I decided, well, here's your chance. You should start that quilt business you always wanted to, because you're going to be working from home from now on. So you might as well just go ahead and do that. Seems like a good idea.
That sounds exciting. You said you've been in Arizona your whole life.
Yeah, I got to do some traveling a lot, thank goodness, but pretty much always just come back here. No place else has the giant cactus,
Yeah.
You can't get warm enough anywhere else.
Not if you love that heat.
You get used to it.
You mentioned your dad. Can you share about being a caregiver for him?
So caregiving is kind of silly. Dad, bless his heart, he doesn't complain. I'm so blessed. And he's not in serious dementia. He had brain surgery and a stroke. He's a little silly, but not, I'm really lucky that way. Most of what I do is I'm fixing the doctor bills. I'm fixing the prescriptions, all the things that aren't supposed to go wrong, but always do. I have to stay with him when he's in the hospital because he's so nice. He'll just tell everyone, is this your medication? Sure. Did you eat today? Sure, I'm fine. The doctor will come and how do you feel? Oh, I'm fine. Why are you in the hospital? So I have to stay with them because he's too nice. Mostly caregiving is really just being an advocate and a lot of cooking with the diabetes. He eats like 5 little meals a day. I've just learned when I get stuck on a project or in writing, if I don't know what's coming next, I find myself doing dishes or pulling weeds. I've trained myself to just go right to the chores while you're thinking things out. And that's how I multitask the business and everything.
Yeah. Even though your dad had such a great attitude, it's still something your mind always has in the back of your head that you're keeping on top of.
Boy, that's true. You always have to think. I set booby traps for myself. I have a special lamp I turn on when I'm cooking dinner. If that lamp is on at bedtime, then I forgot to give him his medicine. So I'll do the medicine and turn the light off. Things like that to keep myself on track.
Yeah.
You can't forget. You can't skip any one thing, just cascades,
Right. Ronni, was there anything else about your family that you wanted to share?
My aunt made all our clothes growing up for me and my little sister. So she was a huge inspiration for me learning how to sew and believing that this could actually work, cutting up perfectly good fabric. I started out, we just wanted to do ready wear. The quilts are way too hard. Who could make a quilt? I'd talk to quilters and they'd say they spent a year making a thing. I was like, oh, I could never do that. Quilts are always a huge mystery to me, but I consider myself a pattern collector. I've been a lifelong, I'll sit down to read patterns like they're books. And as a librarian, I had access to every quilt book. I read them all. So that's how I learned to write patterns.
That's so neat. I haven't been to the library lately to look at what they have in quilt books, but when I started out, that was the first place I went, was to the library.
Oh, neat. You know what else is great is used bookstore. They stock a lot of pattern books.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
More than the libraries do. The libraries, they go by what's checked out the most or what they keep on the shelves. And so craft books kind of get cycled through really fast.
Thinking of, if you had great-great-great-grandchildren, how do you think they will describe you when they're looking back on your life?
Wow. I hope they would say I was creative enough to keep trying new things and not give up on anything. I hope they'd see that they don't need to worry. God's going to worry for you. You just find your business and let him take care of everything else.
And then what message would you like to give them?
I think just that. Don't worry. In the beginning, when I'm working from home and trying to make my own business, wasn't easy. One night, there was nothing for dinner. And I said, Lord, I hope you know what's for dinner because I got no idea. Finally, I sent my daughter next door to borrow an egg and I cooked pancakes. He's like, yeah, Mom just feels like breakfast for dinner. That's what we're doing. There's nothing wrong here. Don't worry about it. That's when I learned that loaves and fishes, it's true. You don't have to worry.
What a wonderful story of provision.
Thank you.
Well, besides quilting, are there other crafts that you do or have done in the past?
I tried knitting, but because I played piano for so many years, I have a really great grip and I just have too much tension. I couldn't do the knitting. But I did finally learn crochet. I really liked that. I never got great at it, but I did make some things my daughter asked for. Just stuck with it. And my daughter's really great at embroidery. I'm proud of that. I started out with embroidery, but I have trouble with tiny things. They just don't fit me. And so I was really proud that she could do that. I asked a friend to teach her a good outline stitch because that's something, again, beyond me. And she was just perfect, flawless. She made a cute thing. And I'm like, that's great. Let's get you another pattern and we'll do another one. And she said, oh, no, I'm done. I've already done that. I'm like, really? She's like, yep, did that. Okay.
So she's one of those one and done people, huh?
Yeah. She mastered it.
You never know how
So,
she might want to use it in the future.
yeah, from time to time, she'll help me. I'll say, you got to do this for Mom because you do it so much better. And she'll, fine. She went to the Renaissance Fair this year. She made her costume. She said, I want to do it myself, Mom. I don't want to make more work for you. Of course, who did the zipper and stuff. I like that group project. We did it together. Cape and dress and everything. It looked really nice.
Oh, how fun. And what a special time that will be.
Yeah. And now she knows she can do it.
How about other hobbies that you do?
Let's see. I got to do rowing at Tempe Town Lake. That was exciting for me. It was just a class, so just a number of weeks. It turns out I'm too short. I'm too big to be the coxswain, but I'm too short to be a really fabulous row team member. So that was just for fun. But it was a big deal to get to learn rowing in the desert. I'm not going to miss that.
It was fun to hear that you were in the crew with my grandson just starting out in that this year.
Oh, he won't regret it. It'll be the most fun, great exercise, right? Sportsmanship. Good for him. That's a great choice.
And I'm really happy with the friends he's made on that team.
Good.
Good group of guys.
Crew is something you can do all the way through the upper grades. And he'll have those friends with him for years and years.
Yeah.
Teams. That's neat.
How were you introduced to quilting?
Oh, slow. Took forever. I tell you what, in high school, in geometry class, our geometry teacher had his own construction company. And one day he said, look, let me show you how to build a house. And he's doing a square, bisect the angles. You have to have the angles or your house will fall over, right? I'm like, half square triangle, quarter square triangle. That's how you make a quilt. I was like, I get it now. I could see the quilt math. I was so excited. But I still didn't make a quilt for years and years. Every time I tried to take a quilt class, I would get a new job and have to work at that time. The teacher would move out of town after the first lesson. And it took years and years. And finally, me and my girlfriend, we found a Saturday morning, like a community interest class at the junior college. And we had to drive an hour to the city on Saturday to class. And this is what my baby's 4 years old now. So all the way from high school to she's 4 years old. And I still haven't got to make a quilt, even though I've been trying to learn, right? And that class, I can't tell you how lucky I was. So this was just a master quilter who's spending the winter in Arizona and wants to teach. And she set this up. And she made us do everything by hand. We had to draft the blocks by hand, every stitch by hand. And wow. So our project was to make a sampler, just tiny, like a runner sampler. And you know what? I still haven't finished that sampler. Oh, no. It was too hard with the baby. So my first quilt is still my oldest UFO. It's still not, now I'm like afraid to finish it. I'm like, what would happen if I finished that? But just the lesson of doing every single piece without the machine or anything. The best experience. It was the best beginning I could have had.
What a great foundation to be able to build on.
Yeah, I didn't even know how lucky I was when I signed up for that.
So whether it's a quilt you made or someone else made, do you have one that you just love?
Eureka by Jackie Robinson. And I got to have a class with her once. I think she was retiring. It was like her last class or next to last class. She was in Arizona. You know, Eureka, the big log cabin star, but it's just spectacular. You've seen it everywhere for years and years. It's just a genius pattern.
I will have to look that up.
Yeah. She started the quilt show in Eureka, Montana. And so she named this master pattern Eureka.
So was that already a quilt that you loved before you took the class? Or
yeah, that's why I took the class. Yes. But that wasn't the class. The class was Stardust. That was fun. What a fun day. My other favorite quilt is Library. I saw it in Quilter's newsletter magazine. And I was like, how do you do that? It'll be 100 years before I ever learned to make a quilt like that. This ashing our piece. And they create a secondary 16 patch. It's just really fun. And then the blocks are samplers. I was like, I'll never be able to make that. All the little retirement homes out here, they each have a little quilt show every year. And I went to the quilters of whatever golf course. And there was that quilt library. And it's even labeled on the back, library made by the Trilogy Golf Course Quilters. And I was like, that's that quilt that I can never make. And it was beautiful, scrappy, kind of a rainbow pattern where it runs through every color from one corner to the next. I was like, that's the most beautiful piecing ever. I'm just going to buy that. So I'm like, it's Mother's Day, and I'm getting that for me.
How fun.
The only quilt I've ever bought.
Really?
Yeah.
I accidentally skipped over. Do your hobbies or crafts show up in your quilts? And I think your librarian shows up in this quilt that you've just been talking about.
Oh, the title, right. Right, that did catch my eye. There's a library quilt. Now, of course, there's the bookshelf quilts. Those are so fun. I haven't done one yet. There's a lot of cute ones. Tempting.
It's in your future, isn't it?
Yeah. That's what I do for New Year's Day. I get out all the patterns I want to make and plan all my UFOs. Which ones are we going to start this year?
What a great idea for New Year's Day. I love that.
That's my little tradition. It's fun.
So what tool are you in love with now?
Oh, I'm all about the rulers, especially the 10-degree wedge. I love the Dresden.
I know I'm simple, and I've been in this a little while, but in my mind, I thought the wedges were all basically the same. There's different size wedges.
Right. Slightly different angles, and how long they are makes a big difference.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so funny when it's so obvious and I didn't realize it.
And of course, you can have the pointed top or the blunt cut top. It just fascinates me how they always come out different.
Yeah. While you're making your quilts, is there a step that you are really looking forward to, or do you like all the steps along the way?
I like designing. I like the colored pencil part in the graph paper, which doesn't even count really, but that's my favorite part. And then I dread every next step. Cutting goes pretty fast, but then like, wait, I got to sew all these together, right? But once I start doing it, then I'm having fun again. So I'm like, wait, we're not done yet. Now we got to basting. But then I start doing it, and then it's really fun. And when you see it come together, you're like, yeah, it was fun. I don't know what I was worried about. You're like, oh, this is going to take so long. But it really doesn't once you get going. My house is tiny. There's no room for basting. So fortunately, our neighborhood quilt club has a nice big space that I can move down there when I need to baste. But then you can't use the spray basting. You don't want to do that in another facility. So for smaller things, if it fits in the bathtub, I'll do the spray basting. I tried spray basting a big quilt outdoors, and when I went to quilt it, there's little twigs and rocks in there. And I'm like, oh, we can't do this again.
No.
Yeah, I guess it was kind of windy that day. I had it out in the yard. That was my only space.
That sounds like it could be an answer to the next question, but maybe or maybe not. So what was your worst quilting experience?
I did my Dresden steps pattern. Each Dresden block has 4 patches. and the stagger. It looks really quick. And I was like, oh, I should do this really giant. I blew it up like 3 times normal size. It just looks like a checkerboard when it's giant. You lose the whole Dresden angle of it. They sold really well. They were some vintage Christmas fabrics, and I used them to upholster some tuffets. I just made giant sheets and sheets of them and used them for different things. I made some tuffets, placemats, every kind of thing, and they sold really well. But I was not happy. I was like, this is not what I meant to do.
They still sound like they were pretty.
Yeah, great colors with all different Christmas colors alternating with an old white. As a design, it was a fail because it was not what I'd intend. Saved by the fabric. Sometimes that happens if you're good at picking fabrics.
There are so many things that we can do, so many options of what to do, but what keeps you coming back to quilting?
So it's like you say, everything has a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get an idea for a great title, and I'm like, that's a quilt story. You can tell that idea with a quilt needs to tell that story. And then I get like obsessed and I drop all my other projects and start making that one.
So when that pops in your mind, are you just seeing the design of it, where blocks would fall, or are you seeing colors?
Oh, just the design. Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to plug in any color to a quilt, right? Dark, medium, light, you have to specify, but otherwise you should be able to. I usually design monochromatic.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at my barn block series, they're all 2 colors, 3 tops,
Yeah, some of those simple quilts can be very striking.
Yeah, I think it's all about the values. You should be able to, whatever your favorite color is, should work.
Yeah, I was just wondering when that idea pops in your mind, if you were seeing it in certain colors or if you were just seeing the design.
No, I'm all about the math. I see the shapes. That's funny. I never thought about that before.
When you're not making a quilt for your shop or a pattern to sell, who do you make your quilts for?
I promised my nephew a t-shirt quilt. That's what we're doing next. And then my aunt that inspired me to sew, she has my grandmother's house coat. And she's like, I'm never going to get these. I wanted to make something for the grandkids. I can't do it. Never going to do this. And so she says, will you help me cut up grandma's things and make just something tiny for everyone? And I'm like, yeah, send them here. Sure, we can. We've got time, So like that. And then, some friends got married. It was last year now. My daughter's friends got married. They'd always been so great to her. I wanted to do something special. I did his and her pillow shams.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I used the drunkard's path with a 3-part. Instead of 2-part, it had an arc in between the circles.
Oh, wow.
In their wedding colors. Yeah, because it was smaller, I could do something fancy and then quilted them with his and hers. The Euro shams, big 24, 27-inch, what were they?
Uh-huh.
So that was fun. So I got to design and quilt and get it finished on time because it was smaller.
That would be so neat to see that extra curve in there.
Yeah, so that was a book from the used bookstore, an old Martingale. I miss Martingale.
Mm-hmm.
My dream was to publish Martingale. I figured that's when you're a real quilt designer, when you have a Martingale book. And I finally, with my barn block series, I think I'm ready to do a book. And I sent them a proposal, and I never heard anything. And I'm like, look, just answer me. Did you receive it or not? So I know I sent it to the right place. That's it. And then I'll wait for whatever answer. And then they still wouldn't answer me. And as a month later, I heard they were shutting down business. And I was like, oh, that's why they never answered. But darn it, I was just too late, right?
It had to be that close.
Well, who knows?
Yeah. Share one of your favorite quilting tips.
So here's one. When I was teaching, I would tell beginners, they're having trouble finding that 1/4 inch, right? And so I'd tell them, if you come up with a wonky line, you missed the 1/4 inch, there's a reason for that. Probably not your fault. There's probably something lumpy in the seam allowance or something visual in the fabric that sent you off track. Who knows? So don't keep taking it out and going over it and going over it. Turn your piece over. Turn it over and sew it in the other direction on the back. And then right away you can see where you lost track, which is the wonky part. And you only have to take out that part, right? That goes off the seam allowance, right? You don't have to take out the whole thing then. Because half of it's probably right? You can see right away. Especially if you use a different color in the bobbin. And then you can see right away which line is this match and where the crooked one is.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And then my other trick is when you're working with the big rulers, sometimes they're too narrow to put a handlebar on them. And they're always going to slip when you're cutting, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard. But if you put another ruler behind the ruler, just right next to it on the side, like you're cutting on the right, put another ruler on the left. And that holds it in place so it doesn't slip. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then do you put your handle partially on the ruler you're using and also on the extra ruler?
Usually just on the extra ruler.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully that's a bigger one.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let's get back to describing how you went from having quilting as your hobby and it became a business for you.
Right. So I switched from libraries to newspapers. They were a lot of fun, but they were neither one a great career path, right? You see how they are now. It was all in 1 month. My dad had a stroke. The newspaper lays me off. They're completely shutting down. It's a 130-year-old property, and they still shut down that quick. Couldn't believe it. And my baby's in the 3rd grade. I'm like, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of everybody? I'm like, well, I'm just going to make a quilt business. Yeah, I always wanted to do that. Etsy didn't have PDF patterns then. There was no Pinterest. There was no Instagram. This was early. I just started with one pattern, and I had to learn everything, the blogging and the social media. There was Quilt Pattern Shop with an E. Do you remember them?
That was before my time.
Okay. So they were doing PDF patterns, and they had a neat encrypted thing so people couldn't just email your pattern to all their friends. And if I'm right, I was told that that was built by Superior Threads. I don't know if that's true, but I've always been grateful to Superior Threads. And I was really lucky to find that because I couldn't invest in printing patterns. It was really, really hard then doing printed ones. So I was fortunate that I got to start with e-patterns really early. And then my pattern was my avatar on Facebook. And I only talked with quilters on Facebook. I didn't have any family friends at all, just all business. And Mark Lipinski saw that tiny, tiny picture. And he said, hey, that's a neat quilt. Just from that, people started buying my pattern.
Wow.
Yes. I still have his little Facebook comment up on my bulletin board. I printed it out.
Of course, you got to keep that. I also wanted to hear about the first pattern that you put out.
So English paper piecing, it was hexagons. And this was right at the start of the hexagon craze. And it's a handbag. It's a basket tote bag. So everything's pieced, the handles, hexagons, everything. And so it's the flower basket. That's kind of like grandmother's flower garden, except it really is a flower basket.
Oh, fun. And then you also mentioned a pattern of a cactus.
Okay, so my tessellating saguaros. That was my first full size. Yeah, I guess it was. So I started drawing out with the graph paper, the tessellating saguaros. And when whatever possessed me to keep going, when I got across a couple pages, I realized there's a repeat and I could make it into a block. I was like, holy cow. So there's 2 blocks and they're rectangular. So that's very odd, right? I decided instead of building from the center out, we just do it like we read. We'd build left to right. You start with the left piece and just adding on units to the right to get the rectangle. And I said, there's 2. They're the same, but they alternate colors.
Okay.
And then it's really easy once you've got the blocks. Some people are scared of it because you can't see the saguaros happening until you get the blocks together. It's all jelly roll cut. It just looks like random strips. But then when you put them together, you can see, oh, look, there it is. There it is. They magically show up, the saguaros. It's not that hard, but it's just a little bit different. Got to have faith in that. We'll try it.
It is fun when you finally lay it down and like, oh, look, it came together.
Yeah, really. You won't see it until the last minute. And it uses 8 colors.
So 8 different fabrics.
Yeah. I've worked with it enough that I can tell you exactly where to piece your focus fabric so you get kind of an argyle pattern.
Huh.
Yeah. You can do single or double, but because of the repeat, then it jumps to king size, adding a 3rd layer to the side and the bottom. It gets exponential with those extra large blocks. I am rewriting that pattern right now. My neighbor does beautiful saguaro watercolors, and she traded me some sewing work. So I'll have the pattern with illustrations. It had to be illustrated. I illustrated every step because it was so unusual to make sure that add this piece here. And I drew it with a geometry app, and it was terrible. It was a little wonky, and the colors kind of, they were close. So I had quilt pattern writers. Do you know them?
No, I don't.
Bless their heart. Real graphic artists that speak quilting. Finally, after all these years. Hallelujah. And I said, can you just redraw these for me so they're perfectly accurate and perfectly colored? Bless their heart. It was a lot of pictures, right? And they did it like fast. Like it took them like 3 days, and I had the whole thing re-illustrated. And so I'm going to publish it as a spiral book with the watercolor art and the proper quilt illustrations. And then because there's so many colors, it's kind of hard to imagine. So I did one in batik, and I did one in Christmas colors. And then my friend Andrea did one in Valor colors. And so I'll try to have a lot more examples in there to see how it works.
Oh, that's going to be so helpful for those that want to make it.
Like I said, I'm a pattern collector. So this would be something I would want. It's one pattern, but it'll be a whole little book of itself.
Yeah, I love the idea of it being spiral bound.
Thank you.
Share your business name and tell us how you came up with the name.
You know, I get asked that a lot. Road home quilting. And I said, quilts mean home. I think my first tagline was, quilts take you home, or your home is where your quilt is, or something like that. That was like, yeah, that means quilts and home. There you go. That just came to me right away, and I stuck with it, and I don't know why. That's the easiest choice I ever made.
So it's just you.
Yeah, so when we were starting out, I told my daughter, you got to help Mom. with this blogging. I can't do all this stuff. Now she's like in 4th grade and she's writing the blog post. And I tell her, here's the pictures you got to put in. Here's what I want you to say. Bless her heart. She worked really hard. And her test scores that next year, her school scores, when they do the end of year, the big test, off the charts. I mean, she was always a good student, but now she was like, I was like, wow, that was actually really good for her to do that. Didn't really help me because I had to spend so much time teaching her and helping her that it didn't really save me work time like I planned, but it's great for her. So, yeah, bless her heart. And so that was our family business for a short time. I printed off the posts that my daughter made and put them in a book for her.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Thinking back to when you were able to post that first pattern, do you remember getting that first sale?
Yeah, it was like right away. Like Mark Lipinski said, look at that, the new quilt. And it was like 10 minutes later. Somebody was asking me, where do I get this? And thank goodness we had that PDF shop available.
That must have been so exciting.
Wow. Yeah, I still remember that day.
And now you're an author too.
Wow, yeah, can you believe it? So I had that Mary May book, Insider's Guide to Quilting Careers. And I was like, I got to figure out how to make a quilt business. And it's autographed. So I must have ran into her at a quilt show or something and got her book. And it has every kind of quilt business, long arming, judging, teaching, quilt shop, right? There's a little chapter on publishing patterns. Huge, huge help. But it's all on process. There's nothing on marketing because it was just understood. You'd go to Quilt Market and sell your patterns to shops and jobbers, right? That was it. That's all there was. And so I said, I got to take care of my dad. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to market. How do other self-publishing artists, how do they market their stuff? So I started trying to study that, and that led me to writers, self-published writer marketing podcasts, right? Great. So I was like, that's what I need to do. I need to write quilt stories, but I want to have a serial stories for my newsletter for content marketing hook, right? What a miracle. Right at the same time, there's a notice like on the mailbox or something in my neighborhood. Somebody wants to start a neighborhood writers group. Can you believe that? So I was like, yeah, I'll go down there and see if I can learn how to write. And I still have that same writers group. Again, because Arizona is a retirement place. There's people from all over, Alaska, Canada, Ireland, New York, New Orleans, everywhere. And there are all kinds of writers. There's the sci-fi, horror, history, a lot of memoir, poetry. I think we have everything except romance. And all my friends, they're published now too. I mean, it started out with no one published and people coming and going from the group, but everyone now has a book too. We've all made it and helped each other. And I learned so much. I still like the serial story idea, but I have to try this book thing. So there it is.
Yeah.
The Crazy Quilter.
It was fun reading The Crazy Quilter.
Thank you.
I know this is a very, very small detail and it won't give away anything of your book, but I was excited to see that you mentioned T, G, and Y.
Yeah. I used to get patterns there. Yeah.
Is there T, G, and Y around anymore? I didn't think they were around anymore.
No, but I remember when they were closing down, those patterns are cheap. I was there every day. Like, did you mark down some more? Did you mark down some more? Like, I still have a lot. They don't fit me now, but I still have a lot of those.
Well, that was so much fun for me because that is where I bought my very first fabric in 7th grade for my sewing class.
Oh, sewing class. I remember sewing class. They don't have that anymore.
Oh, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But to see that pop out off the page, like, she knows about TGY.
I'm old enough to remember TGY. Yeah. Isn't that fun? Yeah, you can get everything there.
Yep.
Oh, I'm glad you liked that, Pa.
Yeah, it was great. I'm afraid to say anything because I don't want to give anything away, but that was a fun read and just something I could relax with. So thank you very much.
Good. I hope it wasn't hard on your eyes.
It wasn't. I'm doing everything with one eye or the other. I just can't do it with both.
Yeah.
Oh, I meant to ask you this. Is the main character Dana or Dana?
Oh, I thought it was Dana.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I spell that right?
Yeah, it's spelled the exact same way, but I've run into people that pronounce it differently.
There you go, then.
I was just curious what was in your head.
Over the day, I decided I'm going to be a writer. I dropped my daughter off for this study something, the high school, new friends, right? They're going to study team project. And I'm sitting in the car with my pencil and my notebook. I'm going to be a writer. So here I go. And what's the first thing you write? Well, there has to be somebody you walk down the street, somebody opens the door, whatever, right? After you do it's a dark, stormy night, you need a name. And I'm like, oh no. You know how important names are, right? I'm like, you know how you are. You're going to spend the rest of the year researching the proper name and you're never going to write anything. You're just going to procrastinate on name research. If you're going to be a writer, you got to take the first name that comes in your head. Promise right now that you will just take whatever name comes up and live with that. You know the story of Gone with the Wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Scarlett O'Hara was named something awful, Murgatroyd. Who knows? It was really bad. And the editors fixed it. The editors came up with Scarlett. Thank goodness. And so I'm like, you just got to trust that you're going to find those people that will fix it for you. And you got to go. So I texted my daughter, what's the name for an old lady quilter? And she texted me, Mom, I'm busy studying. And I texted her back, ask your friends. I need a name. So her friend June, he said, Edna. I was like, yes, Edna. Edna. So now I start all my stories with Edna, and I meant to change that later on. But no, Edna's still in the story, even though she's been in a lot of stories already.
Well, that's great because that character, I feel like I can picture her because of that name. So I'm glad you kept it in there.
It's the perfect name. That's my Scarlett O'Hara name. The book started out as a joke. I was just supposed to be writing short stories for the blog. And I thought, what if quilters really were crazy? Ha ha. How fun would that be, right? But then I started researching insane asylums and women in crazy places. And then it got really serious, and the quilt therapy became more of a theme rather than the joke.
Yeah.
And again, I thought, oh, this will just be short. And then it kept going and going. And when I crossed 22,000 words, I was like, that's a real book there. That's it.
Have fun. Well, I hope that goes well for you.
Same thing as the quilts. It always starts with the title. My stories always start with the idea of a title, and then how do you explain that?
Ronni, can you tell me about your logo?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a great story. So my dad's second stroke, we went to the hospital, and I was flipping out. I was like, not again. And the nurse was a quilter. All the nurses were quilters. And I knew I was going to live in the hospital. I didn't know what I do. So I brought Dad's quilt to the hospital because he'd been cold. And the nurse was like, hey, you're a quilter. So am I. It's okay. And she brought me some quilt magazines and kept me alive. She's supposed to be taking care of my dad, but she really helped me. I brought Aunt Vicky's quilt that she'd made for my dad. It was just a little throw, and I brought it to the hospital. And I wrote a story about that. And I said, someday I will make a block for the quilting nurses. And I did. The first block in my barn block series is Medic, which is that white cross. That is my logo now. And when you put it together, the secondary design is the red cross. So it's red cross, white cross. It looks really cool. That was huge for me, that a bad day became a pretty good story and also a really great blog. And I was like, that's my logo. So I didn't start out with that logo, but now that's my logo. And so when I did the book, they said, what's your publishing name? I'm like, well, Road Home Quilting. And they're like, you need your favicon, you need your publishing logo. I'm like, oh, I have that. I have that right here. I used that Medic block.
Nice. It's a great block.
Thank you. And that one's not hard, but it looks nice as a square or a circle.
Oh.
You don't know wherever you're going to have to put a logo sometimes. And so if they trim off the corners, it still looks great. It's still a quilt block. You can still tell.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
And at the time I was making spoonflower fabric, I wanted my blocks really tiny print on fabric. I thought that was a good idea. So I got the spoonflower color chart. So I could tell when I picked the colors for the barn blocks, how they were going to print on fabric. That was kind of really far out there, right? And so I really like that red.
Again, it's just amazing the detail that just a glance, you don't think of everything that goes into something like that.
Right. That logo was years in building. First, the story and the promise that I was going to make a nurse's block. I called it nurse's block for a long time. That didn't make sense. I finally settled on Medic. And then just looking at the ways that could be printed and finally like, oh, I need a logo.
That's great. You also mentioned teaching. So are you teaching quilting?
Well, I taught at Joann's. It was just little short shifts close to home, 2 or 3 hours, and I didn't have to go far. So at the time, that was okay for my dad. And then they recommended I transfer to the Viking. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. But again, just short shifts and close to home. Let's see, I moved to Viking in March, and the next month was COVID, and the teaching is shut down. I was going to teach and do Viking for a while. That was the plan. But right away, the teaching was shut down, and they never got that back after COVID. And I think, well, you see what happened to the whole thing.
So you didn't go on to teaching online or anything?
No, really trying to stay in my lane. Like you've learned all this microphone stuff and recording, editing stuff. And I'm like, no, I can't even maintain the blog. I have a lot of PDF patterns right now, but they're written so basic. They're on the website because you're printing this, your printer ink, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to waste your paper. I don't want to give you a bunch of fluffy illustrations and stuff. So they're just bare bones. Just here's the top. I'm not going to tell you basting or whatever. I might tell you any tricks. Just, for people with a little bit of experience, here's a pattern. But you can't give that to shops. I can't print those, right, add a cover and send them to shops. I'd have to rewrite each one. Right now, I'm dressing up the PDF patterns, especially as a pattern collector. I got looking at these and like, no, they're not fun. They're great designs, but they're not fun to read. So I am dressing them up with a little art, a little more instruction. If I do have a great idea for quilting design, make sure that gets illustrated, included. So they're just more fun. And so I can more easily print them for shops since I want the book to be in quilt shops.
Yeah.
And how's that fun if there's no patterns to go with it? So I'm dressing up the patterns. I wrote a few tutorials for the blog, really beginner level. My patterns are more experience level, but my tutorials are more beginner level.
Oh, that's helpful. And those can be found on your website, right?
Yeah, so there's the pattern shop, payhip.com/roadhomequilting. And then the book and the book bags, the pencil cases for wholesale sets. I had a friend, she got a set of books for all of her girlfriends. I thought it would be more like guilds who wanted a fundraiser could get a set of books, or book clubs. As a librarian, I know how hard it was for everyone to always afford the book for the club every time. So I was like, here, if you buy them as a set, it helps us both, right? And so that wholesale shop is roadhomequilting.bigcartel.com. My book, The Crazy Quilter, is available everywhere, really, ebook or print book. If you don't see it at your library or bookshop, they can order it. Or it's online, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anything. All the ebook places, Kobo. Well, I can't name them all. There's so many. But if you want a set, a wholesale price set, you'd go to the Big Cartel shop, bigcartel.roadhomequilting.com. And it's on audio now. The audio is only on Apple Books.
Okay.
And it's AI.
Oh, I was wondering if you read it or had somebody else read it.
No, it's AI. It's kind of a pilot thing they were trying out. And so I got to participate. I got to choose American or British, soprano or baritone, and romance or mystery reading.
Huh.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about your business that I missed?
It's such a blessing that I get to work from home and have fun.
Yeah.
And that things keep working out.
Well, Ronni, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was great to have you on A Quilter's Life.
Thanks, Paula. I had the best time.
So wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye, Paula.
You can find more stories on aquilterslife.com or subscribe on your favorite podcast player so each episode will be downloaded automatically. Also, I want to hear about you and your wonderful quilts. Please contact me, Paula Chamberlain, through the website to set up an interview. And as always, thanks for listening.